Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hello, everyone. This is Carter Froelich, and welcome to the Land to Lots podcast. And today's topic, as Cuba Gooding Jr. said in Jerry Maguire, is show me the money. And this, I believe, is one of the most important topics, but often overlooked topics as it relates to special district financing, and that relates to processing reimbursement binders. And to help us understand what reimbursement processing is all about, I have one of the industry leaders with me here today, Froelich, who is the head of our business segment at Launch Development Finance Advisors related to reimbursement processing. And Curry, over the years, has processed hundreds of millions of dollars for our developer clients and helping them get to the money in their special purpose taxing districts. So Curry, welcome. Glad you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Curry, as a beginning of the podcast, maybe you could describe for our listeners what you do for land developers and home builders in relation to getting them the money for their projects for which they have special districts.
Well, primarily what I do is I prepare reimbursement package submittals that ultimately contain all of the necessary documentation that is needed for the developer to receive their reimbursement funds.
And Curry, I know that I've seen some of these reimbursement binders. I mean, they're volumes and thousands of pages. So I know this documentation varies from district to district and from state to state. But what are some of the typical documents that are included in the reimbursement binder that you're submitting to a jurisdiction or an agency or a district for reimbursement?
Typically, the information that would be included would be improvement plans, contracts and change orders, invoices, your proof of payment, whether that's canceled checks, scanned copies of them, lien releases, and then either public bidding or prevailing wage documentation, depending on the state.
Yeah. So public bidding, does that relate to that we followed public bidding, that we publicly noticed the public bidding activity, the award of contracts, the recording of bids, that type of thing?
That's exactly right. It's very important, and that's something that needs to be included depending on the state you're working in.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, it's kind of a running joke. Once we get the district form for our clients, I say, congratulations, you got your special district established. We're going to be able to issue bonds and get you the money. And then in the same breath, I say, my condolences, you've got yourself a special district, and now you're going to have to track all of your costs and submit those to the district for reimbursement. So let me just make sure I understood what you said related to tracking invoices and canceled checks. So for every invoice that a client pays related to the construction of a water line, sewer line, roadway, for which they want to get reimbursement, they're also having to provide proof of payment in the terms of a canceled check and lien releases. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. That is correct. Yes.
Well, how do you track all of that?
Well, typically what we like to do is we have our client provide everything to us electronically over the web, and it is stored in a electronic file that we have access to, and our clients can access and upload things as needed. And typically, as new information comes in, we review it and process it into our LRS database. And at the end of that, that's ultimately what goes into the reimbursement binder that's submitted to the jurisdiction.
Okay. And Curry, you used an acronym there, LRS. What does the LRS stand for?
The LRS stands for the Launch Reimbursement System.
And what exactly is that? And do you use it for all of our clients, and do most of our clients use it, or are there other mechanisms that they use?
Well, we set that up for our clients, and ultimately what it is for is to track every single invoice and contract and change order and documentation that we mentioned a few moments ago. And that's how we keep track of everything that we need when we're submitting our reimbursement binder.
So, kind of in a nutshell, it's a huge electronic cloud-based depository where all this information goes, and then that information is summarized through various means to be able to show where we're at in the reimbursement process. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
In your experience, and you've been doing this for a long time, Curry, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of different situations where clients have done things really well and some where they haven't. But in your experience, what are the biggest errors that clients have made in relation to reimbursement processing?
Well, typically what we've seen would be non-compliance with public bidding procurement processes. Additionally, contracting multiple infrastructure projects with a single contract when they should have been separated. Failure to pay prevailing wage or the incorrect prevailing wage rate for the year, or just not keeping track and missing certified payroll reports.
Wow. Let me ask you a couple of things, because some of that I just want to make sure that I understand and the listeners understand. So, non-compliance with public bidding requirements. So what happens if somebody, because of their state enabling statute, they're required to go out and publicly bid the infrastructure, but don't? They process all their reimbursements, or through you, but they haven't publicly bid that infrastructure. What happens in those instances?
Well, that would be what we would call a very serious issue. Typically, if that were to happen, any of the related invoices and costs would then be ineligible.
Yeah. So if you're in a state that requires public bidding, and there are some, for instance, Texas with the MUDs, Arizona for the community facilities districts, for instance, and you are not doing public bidding for public infrastructure for which you want to be reimbursed, your SOL, so to speak, as it relates to those costs related to that project, right? You just can't get reimbursed for it.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's really important to be able to get together before you go out and start publicly bidding, to have an understanding of what infrastructure is going to be financed through the district, and make sure you're communicating to your team that this is the infrastructure for which we're going to have to go through the public bidding process, and then have a process set up to go through that public bidding process and track all those reimbursements. And Curry, it's my understanding that in some of the states that you're practicing, to the extent that our clients don't know how the public bidding process works, that you actually prepare templates and binders and processes for them. Is that true? And where do you do that?
That would be correct. And typically, what we prepare would be public bidding binders for design, bid, build, and construction manager at risk.
Yeah, and that's for the state of Arizona, where I see that most often. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've seen them. They're pretty cool. So they're a full template that the PMs can utilize to make sure that they're following all of the processes required by the state of Arizona. Now that's cool. Hey, the other thing you mentioned is contracting multiple infrastructure projects with one contract. Why is that a problem? And do you have any experience related to that on why, if that is a problem, it should not be done? Especially as it relates to processing reimbursements through a district.
Yeah, the main issue with that is when we are reviewing the invoices and ultimately the jurisdiction is reviewing the reimbursement package that we put together, it can be very difficult to discern which project specific construction costs are related to if there's multiple projects on a single contract, unless they're very clearly defined. And so that's sort of the issue that we've seen before in the past.
Yeah. And I walked by your office and heard a few your team members uttering some profanities as you were trying to break out some of those invoices between the projects, right? Because it's really hard to discern what line items relate to what projects. So therefore, you and your team have to go in and expend more time and man hours, which amounts to more costs that our clients have to pay to break out all the costs and put them in the right buckets for reimbursement. Is that a correct statement?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here again, the key for our clients is, before you start going through the contracting process, make sure you're talking with us to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's going to be creating the most efficiencies for you, meaning that you're only going out to public bid or paying prevailing wage on projects for which you want to be reimbursed, and then doing it in such a way that is going to accelerate the reimbursement processing activities so that you can get those binders done and into the jurisdiction to get reimbursed as soon as possible. So yeah, and I know your team does a great job doing that, Curry. Tell me about the comment on the prevailing wage. Now, what happens if you don't pay prevailing wage? You've done everything else right, or on one of the prevailing wage reports, you don't pay the correct amount because the contractor hasn't updated their fee schedules. What are what can you do to overcome that challenge if you run across it?
Well, there's a couple of ways that can be resolved typically. Some of the solutions that we've applied in the past with success are we've had change orders issued to back pay the difference in prevailing wage that was not paid or had been incorrectly paid.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one way to get around it.
Are you saying you just go back and get a kind of do a catch up payment?
That yeah, you would issue a change order typically,
Okay.
and then you would have another invoice associated with it, and that invoice would ultimately be paying the missing prevailing wage, or it would be paying the rate that wasn't originally paid
Oh,
correctly.
okay. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So, Curry, what are some of the other more common mistakes that you see our clients or new clients making as they try to get through the reimbursement process?
Well, I've seen where they've seek reimbursement for non-eligible infrastructure items. For example, uh, costs related to dry utilities, whether it's cable or phone lines, that sort of thing, or uh, ineligible soft costs like landscaping, flowers, that sort of thing. And then other things that I've seen in the past would be not including other eligible projects as authorized improvements to allow for the cost savings to be utilized to fund other improvements, which also just means having a extra project in case we have extra funds in the acquisition reimbursement fund. So
Okay.
basically, we have other costs that we can spend money on.
Yeah, so that's what we want to make sure that we're not having to give money back to the bondholders. So if we have cost savings, we came in under budget, we're able to take any existing bond proceeds that exist and apply those to other projects to make sure we're not giving back the money to the bondholders. Is that accurate?
Exactly. And to put it short, it says you don't want to leave money on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything else that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, a couple other things, ensuring the consistency of project name descriptions between contracts, invoices, lien releases, and change orders. Just making sure that kind of the paperwork is clean and not accidentally referencing another project in lieu of another, and just keeping everything clean. More to that point would be misfiling things, kind of not keeping track of documentation that you're supposed to keep track of, or just losing the files and having to go back to the contractors and asking them for a new copy of it if you can't find it. It just kind of slows the whole process down. And then ultimately, if you have the loss of institutional knowledge, when, for example, a reimbursement person leaves, you're in trouble at your organization.
Yeah, they kind of have job security, right? Because they're the ones that have been processing everything. They hold the keys to the kingdom, and if they leave, they take everything with them, right? So that would be one of the advantages for hiring us to take care of all that through the launch reimbursement system. We're always
Exactly.
here. We're never going to leave you, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, what are some of the things that you do to ensure that some of the errors you've just discussed that clients, you've seen our clients and or others make as they go through the reimbursement process? What are the things that you do that would prevent this type of thing from happening?
Well, involving launch up front with our team, we will help our clients determine the estimated net bond construction proceeds,
Mm-hmm.
eligible facilities that would be eligible for reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
We would also assist with the establishment of job cost project names and accounting numbers in order to keep things clean, like I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
We'll help with the public bidding procedures and making sure that everything is done according to statute.
Mm-hmm.
We would also help track uh, funded construction costs to date with contract and change order amounts, and
Mm-hmm.
then ultimately we use our LRS to track what documents, as I was saying earlier, that may be missing, and we typically put together a list of anything that we note that could have a potential issue or that is missing, and we discuss that with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We also provide management with another service that we have, which is called the Launch Control System Matrix, that shows the real-time activity of all company and division project costs and reimbursements in process or already completed.
Uh-huh.
And then, like I was saying earlier, we hold either weekly or monthly or quarterly meetings with company management to discuss any reimbursement activity and or issues that we've uncovered as we've been reviewing our clients' invoices and contracts and anything that we should discuss before the submittal.
Yeah, and I've listened to you on some of the calls with the public builders, and especially the public builders that are trying to manage cash flow, meaning they're really interested in accelerating cash into their pro forma, and they use those weekly meetings, the launch control system matrix, and the LRS job reporting as a real management tool to help them manage cash and get it turned over to corporate. And I just thought it was a really neat way to be able to handle what is a very complex subject, but trying to keep it very simple for management to make decisions, and then also, to interface and coordinate with the guys in the field, the accounting department, et cetera, to make sure all those documents are being provided in a timely manner. So, yeah, I think I've seen you and your team in work, and it's amazing. So, and in relation, to the timely tracking and processing of reimbursements, what is the one thing that company management, in your experience, should really be concerned about?
The loss of institutional memory about reimbursements,
Yeah.
and that would be due to either personnel leaving or just lost records.
Yep.
And we at Launch can address these issues because we've been in business for over 30 years and we're not going anywhere. We can keep all the documents and institutional knowledge safe and sound and show our clients the money.
Yeah. And, just a personal experience. We had a individual that was involved in two large projects that we were working on, and they were processing all the reimbursements for two separate clients, and there was an issue with one of them, and they lost all the institutional knowledge, and we had to come in and kind of clean everything up, which we did. It wasn't a big deal. It took a while though. And then the other is this individual was really holding out for significant raises every time the annual review came around, because they knew that they had the keys to the kingdom, as I said before, and they had all the institutional knowledge on what was done where the reimbursement binders were and what's been submitted and what wasn't. And so that was a learning experience for me. That's the first time I ever saw that. Well, Curry, I really appreciate you taking the time to share these tidbits of information. And to our listeners out there, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is one of the most important aspects of the special district financing, because you can set up the district, you can issue bonds, but if you don't have the processes, procedures, and infrastructure in place to assemble all of this documentation that's required, not only by state statute, but by bond indenture, and as the district financing agreements, you are going to waste time, or you may even lose track of and may not be reimbursed for some of the infrastructure which you're entitled to be reimbursed. So I really encourage everyone that is operating and funding infrastructure through special purpose taxing districts to make sure that your infrastructure is in place. If you have any questions, please reach out to myself or Curry Froelich at Launch, and we would love to be able to set up a meeting to show you, our best practices and how you can get over this hump as it relates to special purpose taxing districts. If you find this podcast informative, please pass it on to your team members. I encourage you to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and stay tuned for the next Land to Lots podcast. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.